So we have a great schedule laid out here before us, and it looks like we can still stick to this if you want to do a quick introduction.
Yes. I don't know if these are on. I'll be very quick if I can. Commissioner Schneider, thank you very much for this opportunity. Just a little bit of introduction, and I put in the packet just a few things. One is the information from the Regulatory Commission. While recognizing that the City of Seward does not fall under a utility that's required to have a net metering system, I thought it was instructive about what they thought should be done and how it should be rolled out for utilities that are subject and required to have net metering for its customers. Also, it kind of gives you a framing of time. These rules were adopted by the Regulatory Commission in 2010. That's 10 years ago now. And they weren't the first commission to do this. We had net metering long before this and requirements in other states. And then the City of Seward adopted their regulations 2014. So these regulations have been in place for 6 years. But in those 6 years, we only have 2 customers that have been able to hook in interconnected solar systems into our system. So it's an indication, just looking at that and thinking about that, that we've got to make some adjustments. We've got to go forward in a different direction. And I really want to assure this board that this is where the Seward Utility will go under my direction here while I'm here in the interim position. So with that, I've arranged these folks, 3 utility folks. One of our customers who did get a system hooked up but is still waiting for his bi-directional meter. Not always very happy, but I think he needs to be heard, and his comments are very valuable. And then I've got a couple of folks from one of the number of companies that connect solar systems up, and they can tell us what they can do and how they can achieve and have more availability for this type of opportunity for the citizens and customers of Seward Electric. So,
awesome.
With that, if you want to get Nathan Minima on the phone, Nathan is now the head of engineering at Golden Valley Electric Association. Last kid I know, and also a very good engineer and a good manager. So I'm pleased to be able to have him participate.
They use those simple words and they change it.
Hey Nathan, this is Corey Borgeson. We've got you now in front of the PACAB board here, and appreciate you willing to do this. And Nathan, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you for a little bit to tell us a little bit about how the interconnection and the renewable energy systems in Golden Valley get put in place, and just a brief introduction would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Corey. My name is Nathan Minima. I've been working here at Golden Valley primarily in the engineering department for the past 10 years, and kind of specific to the Golden Valley's participation in renewable generation. We have what we call our SNAP program, Sustainable Natural Alternative Power. So that program was developed back in 2005, I believe, and started out as being set up as standalone renewable producers, which we called our SNAP, which was just the true SNAP program. So you have a standalone, a separate meter that would be used to meter production from a renewable or a cogeneration facility. And so this was set up the production rate there is essentially your avoided cost. So it's not just the cost of power, not just being paid for the cost of power, but the fact that you're offsetting the usage. So you can see that the benefit there would be several fold, so it'd be a little more beneficial to the member. And just as the program kind of changed and developed, we learned things, of course, and we built up on our website a lot of the documentation that needs to be referenced by a potential renewable SNAP producer, as we would call them. So we've got several things on the website that probably would be helpful for you to look at, just to get a feel for what documents we put in front of producers. So we've got a link to two of the SNAP, our tariffs, the section in the tariff that's spelling out the SNAP program. We also got an annual report. We also have our purchase rate, which is reviewed quarterly, based off of the cost of power. It's kind of some helpful things for the members too, such as just kind of a checklist for things that they need to have addressed before their installation could be considered. We also developed just a service application form that lets the members spell out how many kW they plan to install, the type of inverters and such. And we have an agreement form that we've put together, just kind of outlining, the member's responsibility versus the utility's responsibility, as well as far as routine testing, the standards that need to be met for the installation. But also, says the member would be being paid for their production in the event that they're generating back into the system. There's also a W-9 form, that's something that's required to be filled out by a producer. Lastly, also on the website, we've got a couple different options, both for solar and wind. And with those forms spelled out, it's really just having a kind of a pre-approved one-line or a pre-approved system design, if you will, that somebody who's maybe not overly familiar with how to do these installs would really help guide the member to come up with their own design. So we kind of took the steps within our internal engineering department to come up with those lines, and it really has fillable pieces of information that a member can fill out either by themselves or with the help of the manufacturer or the supplier of the solar panels or wind generator and such. So that kind of just walks the member through how to fill that out, and it being a pre-approved engineered design, it lets us as the utility know that we've had these systems being installed to current electrical code, and that we're not interfacing with facilities that have been installed in a subpar manner, and thus resulting in additional call-outs and costs to us as the utility. So we just want to make sure that we're interfacing with facilities that have been properly installed, and that kind of gives us a tool to put a little bit of quality control on that. And we do allow installations outside of those options, but we require that be accompanied with an engineered design. get an update from our regulatory group. But that's just something that we're tracking on, and I know other utilities on the rail belt are also just aware of that. I think Homer Electric has recently increased theirs and possibly looking at increasing it up to 10%, my understanding. So it's just something that the rail belt utilities are aware of, and would potentially be an upper threshold of how much of this renewable net metered generation can be on our system. So yeah, just kind of a rundown as far as a little bit of history and how we set up our program, and also just things that we're aware of going forward. So hopefully that was helpful in some form, but I'm glad to take any questions that I may have skipped over some details. If I can shed any light on any questions you may have, please let me know.
Yeah, Nathan, thank you so much. Does anyone have any specific questions for Nathan? Yeah.
This is Ben Smith from the PACAB board. I was wondering if you could comment on how many installed kilowatt you have on the system, and or what was the other way to put that? How many customers?
Yeah, so at the end of 2019, we just passed over 1 megawatt. So our winter peak is around 200 megawatts right now. So that kind of just gives you an idea of how much generation we have in there. We've seen a drastic increase this year. I don't have all the 2020 numbers, but we'll know at the end of the year here, and that'll be reflected on our website so you can check. But as of the end of 2019, we were right around 300.
Excellent. Thank you.
Members that were participating in our SNAP program, which is about 98% solar.
Excellent. Anyone else have questions?
Can I just, Nathan's Corey, just a follow-up. You can talk just briefly or talk about the SNAP program. Is also unique in that it allows members of the utility that don't want to put on or can't put on a solar system to contribute to the SNAP producers by a voluntary contribution on their bill. So like when, as a member of Golden Valley, I put an extra $10 a month on my bill, and that got divvied up to all these 300 producers that to help subsidize or help encourage more renewable energy. Nathan, you may talk a little bit how that's working.
Yeah, no, thanks, Greg. Yeah, so that's a good point. As far as other benefits to the SNAP producers, Corey's exactly right. As far as businesses or individuals who want to contribute to the SNAP program can do so on their electric bill, and then those funds can be divvied out as a payment to the SNAP producers, proportionally according to the amount of their nameplate capacity as far as the kilowatt output. So that would be a way that members and businesses in the community can contribute to the renewable energy production, in our community.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that point. All right. Well, if we have no other questions, Nathan, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, while she's dialing,
Yeah.
it's been, the numbers of my recollection of Golden Valley is the utility collects a little over 30,000 a year in these voluntary contributions, so it's significant.
Wow.
Of course, when there were only like 30 SNAP producers, it was a lot more for each one.
Right.
Hello, this is Josh.
Hey Josh, this is Jessica with the Port and Commerce Advisory Board in Seward. How are you?
Pretty good.
Great. Hi, Josh. This is Corey, and I appreciate you being available here to discuss what's going on at Matanuska Electric with hooking up people with renewable energy systems. So We'll turn it over to you for a brief time. Thanks.
Okay. So I guess I just want to give a quick overview and hopefully leave lots of time for questions. I understand it's just about 10 minutes. So our basic process it starts with a member submitting an interconnection application, which lists some basic information, the site, who's the owner, the size of the individual generators, the total capacity of the system, and what type of inverter would be used. Along with that application, we require a one-line diagram, fairly simple, one-line diagram and a site plan, as well as certifications for UL 1741 and IEEE 1547, which cover UL listing as safety related for the equipment, and IEEE covers interconnection of distributed energy resources. That application process is free to our members. We typically process around 35 to 40 applications per year. Our typical size is around 5 kW, but we have anywhere from 1.5 kW up to 25 kW systems that have been installed. As far as safety equipment, we require that a visual disconnect be supplied on the member side of the meter, so that if our personnel does have to work on the system during an outage or otherwise, they can go and physically disconnect the member-owned generation from our system to ensure that there's not going to be any power fed back on the system, which is a requirement of the interconnection agreement that is required to be signed. I'm not sure how familiar folks are with IEEE 1547. It was originally put together back in the early 2000s. I think 2002 and 2018 there was a new version released, which the big change was moving from what's called anti-islanding to allowed islanding. Basically, that would allow that system to operate when the power was out, and we do not allow that at this time. So if the power goes out, the member must turn off the generator, or it should turn off on its own because the inverter should turn it off. As far as any upgrades to the system, we do, I think I spoke to Corey briefly yesterday regarding transformers. Typically we can get multiple members onto our standard residential transformer, I believe is 25 kVA. We do have transformers down to some legacy ones that are down to 10 kVA. You can let multiple members onto those. We don't have a process in place. We're keeping an eye on multiple members installing on a single transformer and making sure that the gross nameplate capacity of those systems is not greater than the transformer size. And really that's the catch point of that. If there is a transformer or other grades necessary for the member to install, then we require, per our tariff, MEA will supply 25% of that cost. The other 75% is on the member. I think that covers most of the process. I guess once the application's been received, we process it. We have a dedicated engineer who goes out. Once the plot plan and one-line diagram have been approved, they'll go out and inspect the system just to make sure that the installation itself matches what they submitted. Once that happens, I will then sign the interconnection agreement, co-sign across from the member, and once the interconnection agreement has been executed, we will send out a member or one of our meter guys to change out the meter to a bi-directional meter that can display both directions. And at that point, we then tell our billing folks to switch that member from a a standard billing agreement to a net metering billing agreement, which then follows the regs and nets out the total generation and either credits them their bill or then bills them correctly. So I don't want to get further than that because I know our time is short and I want to allow for questions. Does that cover most of the process?
Yeah.
I'll open it up there.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I'm going to turn it back to Chairman Schneider here to kind of see the questions of the board.
Yeah, Josh, thank you so much for your time. Does anyone on the board have questions?
Ask someone. Hi, Josh. Ben Smith. If you could comment on installed nameplate capacity and a rough idea how many members on your system, I'd appreciate it.
We have you're talking about the total nameplate capacity of all members is just over 1 megawatt, I believe. And the total number of installed, I think, is at 220 at this point.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions specific to Josh? Yeah, go ahead.
Josh, I got a few questions. What, and I know you're new to this position at MEA, but what are some of the biggest headwinds that MEA sees for your members that want to hook up these solar systems? What's preventing more from doing it?
Currently, I know that the ITC has dropped from 30% to 26% from last year to this year. I know COVID has probably had some impact on people's willingness to put out the capital costs associated with these projects. We've had a fairly steady 35 to 40 applications per year over the last 2 and 3 years. So I think the biggest headwind is, and we're finding, is that just a lot of people don't even know that the program exists. And we actually just had our PR team had what we call a listening session where we are trying to, during this COVID period, pandemic period where we can't really have our annual meetings in person, we're trying to have listening sessions where we can invite members to participate in Zoom meetings and ask questions, and we can actually provide information on different programs. So we just had our first listening session last week or two, and I think it was a fairly decent success. I think we'll get more folks on the next one, but I think right now the biggest thing is that a lot of people just don't know this exists, and then there's a decent upfront capital cost to all of these projects. There are financing options available through some contractors, some home equity loans, things of that nature. But if you're at $3 a watt total for a project and you want to buy a kilowatt system, you need $15,000 to install that project. And that's just a rough back of the envelope calculation. So if you don't have $15,000 laying around, especially right now, that can be a bit of a hurdle for a lot of folks. So that may have been a rambling answer, but I think I covered most of it.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, Josh.
Yep.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, you too.
Madam
Have a
Chair,
good one.
how many members did he say they have?
220.
220. Is there a way to increase the volume a little bit? My ears are old.
You can always go back and listen to it too on YouTube and what
Yeah.
everything too. So.
Please dial the operator.
John speaking.
Hi, John, it's Corey. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Schneider here.
Hi, John.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
I'll tell you, we have used Homer Electric Association's all of the materials that you have available as our guide as we've been having these discussions over the last year. So I think we're probably the most familiar with your utility setup, but I would love to hear from you about how your program is going and any lessons learned that you'd like to share with Seward.
Well, we started, first of all, I'm John Jungling, and I'm Director of Technology and Communications for Homer Electric, and the net metering falls in my department. We started our program, I believe about 2008 with the SNAP program that is equivalent to what the other utilities were doing. And then about 2011 we converted to net metering. And to give you an idea, for the first 10 years of our program, we had less than 100 members that participated. And we've seen explosive growth in the last 3 years. I think right now we're at about 325, and we'll probably have about 80 added this year alone. And we anticipate that this program to actually grow next year as well. We have actually reached our RCA limit of 3%. And we are in the process of updating that limit to 7%, and it looks like that's going to go through. It's been a very successful program for us. And I think some of the reasons why it's been successful is that we've spent a great deal of time with the community, with the process, and specifically by identifying a single point of contact within our organization to be responsible for the entire process for our members. And to give you an idea, we've outlined it. If you've reviewed our website, we actually have some a new website going in to even simplify it further shortly. We've identified it basically as a 4-step process. And step number 1 is the most important, and it's to find a licensed, bonded, and insured electrician to actually install the system. And that prevents a lot of the problems that we've seen in the past of getting these systems installed. And then once that happens, once the member has chosen an installer, then we start the net metering application, which is step 2. Step 3 then is after everything is installed, we do a final site inspection, and then finally we send out a meter tech to actually install a bi-directional meter. By simplifying the process and getting in front of it, I think that's really solved a lot of our issues with these type of systems. We've identified that as long as the system is less than 25 kV, which is part of our tariff, it doesn't trigger then a full engineering review study. We are in the process of doing that right now because we have a few applications that now are exceeding that. But if it's less than 25 kV, we just do a engineering review. Basically, we're looking for how many are connected to the transformer, whether or not they would cause any type of harmonics on our system. Those are kind of the issues we're looking for. But what we've really done is we've identified inverters and installation systems that meet a preliminary engineering review that we've already done. And that's what we're really looking for, as long as it's UL and IEEE compliant with our tariff, and that we've had disconnect systems installed for isolation issues. Those are the main issues that we are looking for. Along with that, now that we're approaching, or going to be approaching 7%, we are doing a full engineering study of the system to see how that will impact. Issues we're looking at is transformer lifespan and regulator lifespans, and how that will shorten them. as well as we're looking at some of the issues on the billing system side of the equation. One of the largest issues we see is once our members get this installed, their biggest issue is billing questions, and we're trying to get in front of that because what they see is basically the net amount. They don't really see what they're generating because what they're generating they're using internally, and the meter only records what's heading back towards us and not what they're actually generating. And that's kind of a synopsis of our process and our system. Do you have any questions?
Can you repeat steps 3 and 4, please?
And
Okay.
two.
Step 3 is final site inspection after completion of construction. And step 4 is, I have to go down my website, the
The new meter.
installation of the new meter.
And what was step 2?
Step 2 is submit your net metering application.
Okay. I have one more question.
Yeah, please.
When you said step 1 was for them to find an electrician, do you have a list of approved electricians that you give to them?
Only if they ask us for it. We are in the process of putting together a preferred program. And the reason for that is we've done these technology workshops as well as electrician training programs for this system. And what we want to do is get in front of that so that if they're installing this system, it's already met our engineering review so that we don't incur the cost up front of doing a separate engineering review study on every installation.
That's excellent. That actually leads into a question that I had about just where the onus lies for the design of the system. When a lot of the people, I mean, first of all, congratulations on having such high enrollment in your system, higher than any of the other utilities that we've talked to. But just wanted to ask, so when someone comes to the office or they say, hey, I really want to put in a solar system, but they don't know anything about the process, do you then refer them to an electrician, and then is it the electrician that's submitting the paperwork that's required in order to approve the system so that doesn't fall on the customer, or how does that process what does that normally look like?
Well, that's where our preferred program that we're putting together right now, because that's been a pain center for us. What's happened, we actually need a signed member agreement from the member, but the electricians and the installers like to get ahead of it, so they'll submit that application for the member. And what we're trying to do is put together that design aspect up front and have the actual installers help with the design and submitting the application, because during the sales process, when they're selling this to our members, they're in front of them right at that time, and we'd like to kind of get in front of that ourselves and get all of that information ahead of time.
Yeah, that sounds great. So the preferred program, that is still in process. When that's done, is that something that would be available on your website, or that you'd be willing at all to share what?
We would be willing to share, and our goal is to get that program in place for next spring's construction season. Right now, we're really at the end of construction season, so everyone, if you're in this business, you know this is a busy time for us. So what we're trying to do right now is just finish up with the current installs that are out there, and then prepare brand new for next season's construction.
Awesome. Any other questions from the board?
Hi, John, Ben Smith from the board. As I understand it, Homer has the most small-scale wind, and I was wondering if you could fill us in for how many small-scale wind installations you have.
I'm not sure on the exact, I can look at our spreadsheet here. Let me see. I'm looking at our wind capacity nameplate. Looks like about 200 kilowatts, roughly 300 kilowatts. Don't quote me exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yep.
One follow, this is Corey, John. You mentioned, and maybe you can talk about the significance, you kind of have this very easy for anyone under 5, you separate out the small producer under 5 kW, make that a lot simpler. Could you maybe just kind of expound on that a little bit?
That's actually simpler for us internally, is what it triggers in engineering. So as long as it's less than 25 kW, from the member standpoint, nothing really changes, all right? But once it hits us internally, depending on the site, determines what we actually do. And it's all on the engineering side and what type of design work that we need from the installer, and then what we have to do for an engineering study or an engineering review internally. So if it's less than 5, it really flows through without a whole lot of internal stops. But once it gets over 5, that's when we start looking at things like the number connected to a transformer, how many are on feeders, if this is a commercial location because it may actually have motors involved, do we have voltage drops to deal with, do we have harmonics to deal with. All of those technical issues trigger usually more than 5 kilowatts, less than 5 kilowatts, but we do actually look at each one of the installations.
Thanks, that's a good explanation.
I have one more question.
Sorry, I just need clarification. At first, I thought you said 25 kV, and then we said 25 kW, and then 5, and I'm so confused.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's kilowatt, nameplate kilowatt is what we look at of the installation.
Okay, 25 kW.
KW,
Got
sorry.
All right, anything else from the board? No, John, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to meet with us.
Very helpful.
All right, thank you.
All right, have a great day. We're staying pretty close to on schedule. 6 minutes behind.
I have some questions, but I think they're better at the end.
Yeah, let's wait until the end and then we can talk big picture.
Phil here.
Hi, Phil. This is Corey Borgeson. We've traded a lot of emails. First time we've had a chance to talk. So, we're here. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Schneider to introduce you. Thanks.
Yeah,
He should turn off his TV.
yeah, or the TV.
Hey, Phil, we're getting an echo in here.
Okay, I need to shut something down. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Phil, thanks for joining us. We've had a chance, I can tell you've been watching, so you know that we've had some good conversations so far. I'd like to invite you to share your experience and what your lessons learned are from your process with the utility department.
Well, I don't really need to go back. You know, we're approaching 3 years now of this process, and I'm very happy that you guys are continuing to work on it. You know, to me, it's been more of an administration issue or a lack of having this administration, I suppose, more than anything, because, you know, you guys cleaned up some language and council approved it, so clearly from city council's point of view, they're very supportive of all of this. It's been kind of a lack of the administration wanting to, you know, to move ahead and recommend changes. So I'm very happy to see where we're at today. This is kind of exciting. I'm not going to rehash all the old stuff, but I was interested in the discussion on the transformers. I mean, currently, right now, we've got only one per transformer. And then things get very gray. I like the idea that they're looking more at what the transformer can handle versus the number of systems. And so I'm very curious what we're going to do when my neighbor wants to put up some solar panels and they're hooked up to my same transformer. I don't
what happens if we're gonna exceed that transformer? Who's gonna pay for the upgrade? You know, the owners are putting in tens of thousands of dollars in promoting renewable energy, and it's kind of a question of what the utility willing to put in to support it. Are they gonna pay zero of the cost, and does the second, third person on that transformer have to cover that total cost of replacing the transformer? Do all of us, do all of a sudden I get a bill 5 years from now, you know, to help pay for an upgrade transformer because I'm part of that system? I guess I would really like to see that cleaned up. So people know, installers know that when they're coming to a neighborhood, they really know what the capacity of that transformer is, and what the neighbors, you know, loads are going to put on it. I guess that's my biggest point right now, besides all the dozens of letters and communications we've had over the years. I think that one still hangs out. So if anyone's got any questions.
So, would you like to respond to that? I was just looking in the Homer tariff here, and it looks like in paragraph 3 on page 8 of the packet, where it says placement of member-owned interconnection. And I think, Phil, you remember we kind of used this Homer document as, you know, our guiding document for the Seward tariff, and it does have an exception in here where it says that requirement can be waived. So it says to maintain the existing HEA distribution system's power quality and reliability, only one interconnection per distribution transformer will be authorized, but this requirement may be waived by HEA when HEA at its sole discretion deems it appropriate under the circumstances. So I believe that's how it's written in ours as well. We don't have that in front of us right now, but could you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, this is Corey. You know, I've looked at the code, and I actually did this morning again. I think that is gone from our current code sections 14.15.410, and I don't want to, I'm not certain of it, but my read of it is that paragraph is gone. But what we do have in here is a paragraph that says we may, upon inspection, require an upgrade to a transformer that will be at the customer's cost. So when you made certain recommendations, or you made the recommendations to delete that paragraph, I can't guarantee, because I don't know the legislative history of this, but it's possible that was accomplished through the city council. But so I need to get back to you on that. I owe you an answer on that. But I think what we heard from Homer is that if it's under 5 kW, they're not worrying about the size of the transformer.
Right.
And that takes care of most of all the applications that they're getting.
Right.
If it's bigger than that, yeah, we're going to take a look at it and make sure from an engineering standpoint, we're not overloading or burdening that transformer. So I think that's got to get addressed, and I think it can be worked out so that it's simpler.
Yeah.
So, this is Linda. So Phil, you're talking about a transformer that's not just yours, it's somewhere on the line in your neighborhood, correct? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, correct. I think there's 3 houses connected to my transformer.
So Corey, how do we address that then? So he's hooked up, let's say he's hooked up, he's got his net metering going. Somebody next to him gets hooked up, and then the third person on the same transformer hooks up, then what? If that transformer needs an upgrade?
Well, you know, that's been under discussion right now over the last couple of months, and because we've been doing it, if someone's going to add additional load, we've been making them pay for the upgrading of the transformer. But my read on it, and that's not in code, and that is not in the what I call the tariff. The tariff says a customer must advise of additional load. It doesn't say they have to pay for the upgrade to our service. So if a customer needs us to put in a bigger transformer, but they're not changing their service at all, then I think it's the utility responsibility to make sure they've got a vibrant enough system to accommodate the load. And you recover that in the additional kilowatts that you sell over a period of time. So I think that as we kind of take a look at this, and it's kind of a little bit of a policy decision, that if we're going to have more net metering, of course, that doesn't increase load, so you don't recover it. And I think Homer said that they'll put in 25% of that cost, but the customer's got to put in the other 75%. So the utilities are trying to figure out how to be fair about this, and I think we'll have to do that as well. But I'll tell you right now, we've only got 2 customers with net metering. I think we need to be, we got to fix that problem, but I don't think it's an immediate problem for us.
Thank you.
And I don't think, the way I read the code right now, I don't think we're limited to only 1 per transformer.
What I remember, the change that we made, there used to be a separate section which said there had to be a dedicated transformer for that customer. We took that out for sure. I remember that was a big part of it.
Yeah, the electric department came back and said they got rid of that, because then you can have multiple ones on the same one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So because it wasn't that much, it was 5.
yeah.
So I don't, while we maybe need to fix that and think about that as we start hoping having growth in these types of systems, I don't think it's an immediate problem.
So what's your take on the code as it exists and our ability to move forward? Do we need a change to code right now to start making this better?
I don't think we need to do it, but I do, and we can have some discussion afterward, but maybe the next folks that we're gonna call, after Mr. Cluzos, is released, will kind of tell us what they can do, because they are actually a company that does come in and will install systems here in the community.
Thank you for the reminder that we have one more call. Hey Phil, did you have anything to add?
No, I guess, my other issue, I guess, is when I read some of the code stuff, and we take snippets out of, the major codes that are, involved in this, and they become law, and the code changes, but we have this language, this outdated language, and I really want to encourage us to not do that so much, certainly reference the code in that chapter or that section, but, to just put a whole bunch of background stuff in there to make us look smart, I guess just confuses everybody. So I would like to see a really nice, clean, simple, application form and process, so we can get a solarized sewer going. So sewer knows that when they come to sewer, here's the standard package. It just walks right through, and there's not thousands of dollars. If I had to ask the amount of time that I spent in this process so far, it's been $10,000 just to get to where I'm at right now. So I hope we do take a look at streamlining the process, making it simple so we can get some neighborhood projects going. So that's about it. Unless anyone's got a question.
Yeah,
Okay,
Corey.
One final thing, Phil, to kind of let you know, or let everyone know, Mr. Kaluza has been waiting a long time for his bidirectional meter. We are sending out the meters today, well, let's say this week. They're boxed and they're ready to go. We're sending out the meters to National Meter Company to be programmed, and they'll come back and we'll be able to put a bidirectional meter at Mr. Kaluza's service here, I'm thinking within the next couple of weeks. But I'll keep him informed on that, and so we are making some progress here, and for our folks that have put all this time and effort to having their systems installed.
Thank you. Linda.
I just want to thank you, Phil, for your diligence and your persistence, and apologize that it's taken this long, but I don't think we'd be where we are if it weren't for you. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even know this was a problem, Phil. Thank you so much for keeping it at the front of our attention. We appreciate you.
Okay, well, next one then.
All right, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks
All right.
again.
All right, last one.
So he hasn't got.
The conference has been unmuted.
This is the most productive discussion we've had on this ever. It's very refreshing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't even.
very refreshing.
Hi, this is Jessica with the Port and Commerce Advisory Board in Seward. Adrian or Carl, it looks like. Okay.
Hopefully.
Hopefully they got a better volume than that.
So he hasn't got connected yet, huh?
Hi, Carl. This is Corey Borgeson. We've got you on the speakerphone here with the Port and Commerce Advisory Board, but you're very quiet. I don't know if there's some way to be a little bit louder.
I can be louder.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you.
That's better.
That'll work.
Talking loud.
Thank you for being here. I'm going to turn the meeting back over to the chairperson, Schneider.
Thank you so much. Hi, I know that Corey invited you to speak to us today, and I actually don't know what you guys talked about specifically, but I appreciate in our packet we do have a flyer from you guys, and I'm familiar with your with what you do through some personal projects that I've had, but as you know, we're working on making our solar interconnect policy here in Seward work for the consumer, and we just were interested in any input that you have and how we can make that happen and how we can make this process smoother for the citizens of Seward.
Okay. So, I mean, what questions do you guys have on the interconnect?
Well, we've talked with 3 different utilities today, and they've all talked about how they're developing programs to have like some preset, pre-engineered plans kind of drawn up so that when an installer comes in, it's a lot easier for the approval process to go through. I was wondering if you have any experience with that in any of the communities and how you've seen that work.
And I'm the one that does all those grid sites that we do for the store in Anchorage? Yeah. I mean, I have a standard one-line drawing that we use that, you know, depending on how we're wiring it, either to a generator or to a farm panel or line tapping the meter base. And it's a standard form. It, you know, lets you know what we're putting up for power so that you know how much power that the customer could put back into the grid. And it tells you, you know, how we're doing it, what wire we're using, and you know, going to code for what's going on right now. There's rapid shutdown issues that are in play right now with NEC 2017. So if you're putting up string inverters or if you're putting up microinverters, it has to meet the rapid shutdown rules. So and placards for those, so that if you guys do have a fire department shows up at somebody's house, that they know that, you know, it does a rapid shutdown on the solar, so they don't get shocked if they shut the power off and touch a line that's live. Because you guys even have a building or a electrical person that goes around and inspects?
Yeah, this is Corey. Yes, we do. We only have 2 solar installs in Seward, and we're kind of, so we don't have much experience. There's a lot of intrepidation, and so that's kind of where we are. And we're trying to, you know, one of the things when I talked with Adrian about this call was hoping to see what you folks there think, you know, would allow more installs in the Seward community.
So yeah, I mean the state has, and the government has mandated any utility that's putting out things over 100 feet of power, and don't know if that's the correct amount, but you know, the mandate for them to be able to buy power back, and the state adopted 1.5% of their outgoing power is what they cap it at. Some of the utilities have raised that cap, like HEA has raised it to 3%, and NEA told me that they can raise theirs when they hit their 1.5. That said what they're going to do when they hit 1.5. They're saying that they will, but they're not guaranteeing it to me. So when we install an Anchorage, we have to pull a permit for it, and meeting would send an electrical inspector and a structural inspector out to check our job when we're done. And then the utility would come behind us, behind them and look at the interconnect to where it goes to their meter to make sure it meets their standards. But in Chugach, Eagle River, Wasilla, anywhere down in the Kenai, that's not in Kenai proper, it's the utility's responsibility to make sure it's hooked up right. There is no inspections. There is no somebody that comes by the town or the city that comes out and inspects it. It's kind of like land use permits. But the utility is the electrical person that, okayed it. So using people that are using electricians to do installs in your community would be a thing that you probably would want to request. That way, the electrician is going to be installing and doing it to code. So some of the companies out there, I don't think there's too many left now that don't do it, but there's a couple companies last year that were doing solar. And flyby companies, right? They just came in and installed solar and really didn't have electricians that were hooking them up and selling to the customers and then leaving and, then the customer worried about their interconnect from the city. Having that as a part of your guys' structure, having somebody do solar installs in your city would be something that you guys would probably seriously look at to have on there. And it is state code that, to put solar on the roof, you have to be an electrician or a journeyman electrician or an apprentice working under a journeyman electrician. Anytime you touch a wire that puts out power more than 32 volts.
So having worked with several different utilities, are there any of them, since you've seen a lot of the different systems in action, are there any of them that have specific things that you've seen work really well that you would recommend that we implement, or are they pretty much all the same?
Well, Chugach seems to be the best. They have one person that oversees everything, so you don't have to deal with 5 or 6 people. And they, when it's all said and done and they approved everything, they actually send me an email with a copy of the signed agreement saying that the system is approved and is energized for the system. None of the other utilities do that, and it's a guessing game if they replace the meter or put a reversible meter on. So it's kind of hard to tell a customer when they can turn their stuff on and the utility hasn't told the meter them that they've replaced their meter yet. If you don't have reversible meters on houses now in Seward, if somebody hooks up renewables to it, it's feeding energy back. Typically, the old meters will actually charge the customers for what they're feeding back versus credit for it.
That's great feedback, thank you.
It's just reading power going to it. It doesn't care if it's like one way or the other.
Right.
So that's kind of crucial. That's one of the things that I would love that MEA and HEA would do a little bit better at. Telling you when the meter's been replaced, telling the customer when the meter's been replaced. Other than that, everybody else is pretty good about, I send them a one-line drawing and the application for the interconnect. And then when it's done, I send them the agreement, which they then would sign and typically should be sending back to me or my client. And Chugach right now is the one that really does that. So that would be something that I would, today, when you guys did that, that'd be great. That way the customer has a sign agreement with you and like that the environment. Do you guys know how much power you guys have provided for your customers per year? How many kilowatts?
You mean on an average residential or?
For everything that's in that your utility sells to customers.
And maybe I didn't hear the question. We've got a load today, probably like around 7 megawatts. We have a peak of about 8.5 megawatts. Our average residential is somewhere around the 600 kilowatt hours a month. And
are you guys going to, are you guys going to adapt the 1.5% cap for net metering?
Yeah, we're not so. I think that from what I understand, that's a policy decision from the city council, but I don't think they would have a problem. We're not even, we only have 2 customers connected with solar projects here. So we got a long ways to go, but I think there's a lot of support in the community, and from what I've heard, that they would embrace as much of this renewable energy as we can do. So I don't think the cap is a problem here. So maybe I might jump with a question back on, based on that, is like, so as a company that sells these systems, how can we facilitate more solar systems being installed in Seward?
Just allowing the net metering to happen will facilitate or will sell more solar in your community. That net metering, doing net metering and allowing the customer to see factory today and use the energy at night and getting credit for it one-to-one is a big part of why people aren't putting renewable sewer right now. Because right now, typically any system that we put in play, they're making more energy during the day, especially during the summer months, than they're consuming, and that energy is being back to the grid. And if they're not getting any credit for that, then it takes a little bit longer, or a lot longer to pay back to the system. But if you guys adopt a net metering program where you are giving it credit for anything they send back and a adjusted credit for anything that they overproduce for the month that they don't consume, which every utility does that does net metering, is typically your cost of what your utility is what they give a customer if they overproduce for the month. Give it to them in a credit so they can use it next month. And not saying it's a check for it. Nobody here wants it, but that's.
Any other questions? No? All right, well, seeing none, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Okay.
And
Thank you very much.
hopefully you'll be getting more calls from Seward residents here soon.
So can you guys keep me in the if you guys are gonna allow that meeting to happen, so that we can start pitching it to that area? Because
Yeah, we've had a net metering tariff since 2014. And it's interesting, one of the other utilities said, well, one of the headwinds is people don't know. So we've not been good about communicating it, and also we're not probably, since we're not used to it and familiar with it, we're not really prepared to deal with a onslaught, but we're gonna get prepared and have a system in place so that, yeah, we need to let the folks, companies like yours, Carl, know that we're open for business here in Seward for net metering.
perfect. Have you guys decided what you guys are gonna use for your reversible, or your bifacial, or bi-directional meters?
You know, funny you should ask, because that's one of the problems we've had, is that we've got meters that are made by, they're Itron meters, and we use National Metering Company, and we are now just sending the meters to be programmed to be bi-directional.
Perfect. Got two guys, I think 2 years ago, went out and replaced every meter in acreage so that they can be bifacial or bi-directional, and they can do a lot more with them. They don't have to go to people's houses anymore to shoot the meter to see how many kilowatts they're using or meters anymore.
Carl, was there grant money for that, or how did they afford that?
I don't know. That would probably be a question that you guys could ask you guys about, seeing that they buy power from them. I'm sure they can answer that for you.
And we had one more question, Tony.
Yeah, what is the average cost to make a substantial difference with, for installation and everything? What would be the average cost a homeowner would be looking at for installing a solar system on their house?
So if you lived in Anchorage and you were the average homeowner that used 500 kilowatts per month, we would sell you a system that would offset 60 to 70% of that at about 15 grand. Installed turnkey.
Wow.
And that's right around 330 a watt installed. That's us doing all the paperwork and all the installs. Energizing the system, setting it up on the internet for your metering, so you can see what your system's doing online.
Oh, Tony, sorry.
And just one follow-up. What do you think is the return on that investment and how many years?
Typically, an increase is about an 8 to 10 year payback. So that's based, a 4% increase in utility over the next 8 to 10 years. If it goes up more, which I think it will, because of the buyout for LLP, it's not payback soon. So it's all based on what the utilities are going to be charging for the next 10 to 20 years. And how much they go up. You guys have anything on how much your utilities have raised in the last 10 years, what your percentages per year?
I don't have those numbers for you. We buy all of our power from Chugach, and it's fluctuated significantly over the last 10 years.
Right.
Isn't there a yearly increase though, that like 2%?
There is Seward has done a cost of living adjustment to our rates of 2%, but last year they did.
It's CPI, it's a 5-year CPI average.
Yeah.
So I think it was 1.6 last year, I believe.
Well, last year they suspended it. There was no increase.
I mean-
The by count, yeah, but
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah, so it's and of course, that's only on our utility charge. The COPA, the charge of cost of power flows through back and forth, and that represents, half, somewhere, depending on how big it is, as much as half or 30 or 40% of the bill. So that fluctuates.
3 to 4% increase per year is about average. That's what it is, an increase.
I think the Seward's average is about 1.2 to 2%, so I haven't seen much more than that.
And one more question for you, just kind of talking about cost. I see on this flyer that we have of not missing the 2020 tax credit. Do your ROI calculations take into account at all potential tax credits or savings in that?
So the production, our online production, is just what the solar is going to make for you, and then our payback, if we sent you a quote, if you sent you one of the quotes we send out to our customers, our payback is based on that, and a 4 to 6% increase in utilities over the next 25 years.
Gotcha.
What's the average,
That online estimator is just an estimator. It takes where we're at in the world and estimates, if you put up this one solar, this is what you expect 20 years based on panels productions. But that is an estimator, and I can't go in there and put different solar panels on there that are more efficient. I can't go in there and put microinverters over string inverters. The only thing I can put on there is the 50T and watts.
Right.
It's pretty close to what you can make, but we typically see 5 to 10% more than what that PV watt sells. Typically see a better spring production than what PV watt does, except for this year because we got all the snow.
I had a question, the lifetime or lifespan of these systems and warranty. What's typical?
The solar panels have a 25-year life penetration guarantee that they won't drop below 80% of production coming from the factory. We typically see only a 10% decrease over 25 years. Microinverters that we use from Enphase have a 25-year warranty. So your system is pretty much good for 25. Solar panels will last up to 50 years or more. I'm sitting in my office and I have some solar panels on the wall here that we call our antiques that are built in the 70s and 80s. And they still make energy. They can take the size and they can still produce energy off of it. So that's old technology. New technology is better.
Awesome. Oh, Carl?
I want to follow up on some information that you provided earlier. I didn't quite catch all of it. You were talking that you based something on a 500 kilowatt, was that a monthly usage or a yearly usage on that?
You were cutting out there a little bit. I didn't hear the whole thing.
I said, when you were presenting some information just a little bit ago, you talked about a 500 kilowatt usage. Was that a monthly or yearly usage for a household?
That was a monthly use for Anchorage.
So you approximately 18 kilowatts a day then? So you would structure a solar panel installation on, the average daily usage works out to be about 18 kilowatts a day, so you'd structure it to 60% of that, or about 10 kW?
No, it'd probably be right in the that would be a 12 to 13 panel array, so we would put a 4,000 watts that would offset 60% of that.
Okay. Now, is there any difference between off-the-grid installations and on-the-grid installations as far as the inverters? Or are they all?
I mean, we're selling grid-side systems now with no batteries. So these are just solar panels and microinverters that assist the grid. They give energy to your house with the grid power. They're combined. So if you're not producing enough of the solar, the grid is going to give you energy. If you're producing too much, it's going to feed the power back to the grid. The meter's going to go backwards.
So if you
So
were,
you start throwing in battery systems on that, then you're going to pay a little bit more for your system and a farther payback. And if you're completely off-grid, now you got to have some kind of backup AC source to charge batteries and have a big battery bank to build around the loads that you have.
Linda.
So the system you just described, can you add wind to that?
You can, I mean, typically the wind turbines, you could put a grid-tied wind turbine up and feed energy into your house to an inverter and a wind turbine.
The same way, so you could have a
Same way,
combination, you could have a
inverter
couple of,
itself would take the power from the wind turbine and make AC power where they would interconnect to your house and work with the grid or anything else you have.
beautiful, thank you.
Any last questions for Carl?
Just.
Yeah. Corey.
This is Carl, this is Corey. So we talked a lot about having licensed electricians and the other utilities spoke of that as well. So, but going to a company like yours, when you do an install, then you come with a licensed electrician.
We actually are an electrical company. We have electrical administrator license. We are our own electrical company.
Yeah. So if we go to, if someone goes to a company like yours, they've got the electrical licensed electrician.
Some of them
Problem
will
solved.
farm that out to somebody else to do the electrical part of it. Some of them will try to do the work themselves and not use an electrician. In an area like you, if you guys aren't expecting it or asking for the electrical person's license, some of the companies will send somebody out there that's not an electrician. They're trained to do the electrical work, but they're not an electrician to do some of this work. So it's really hard to, in our world, it's kind of hard to compete against somebody that's not paying an electrician wages to do electrical work. And have it not to code.
Right. Well, Carl, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And like I said, hopefully you'll be hearing more from Seward residents here soon.
Great, appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So let's open it up. So I'd like to go back to Corey and let you kind of summarize what you've heard and maybe some of your takeaways from it, and then we'll let the board ask some questions.
Great. Well, I gotta tell you, I learned an awful lot here today too. So this has been very helpful. I always tell I'm not the engineer at the utility, so it's been very helpful to hear all this. I just want to, I'll be very brief. With all this information and everything, there's no reason why the Seward electric utility cannot advance folks who are interested in the solar and even create an interest in it. I know early email back to Phil Kaluza, I said, well, it's really an issue of resources. And you respect it, there's only 9 employees in the Seward Electric Department, 4 or 6 of them are power plant linemen, and it's, anyway, trying to do a lot of things with not a lot of resources. I think as we go forward, we understand the community, there's no reason why the Seward Electric can't put the resources into this, and that's what I'm committing to. So we'll get it done and we'll do it, but there's always, I'm afraid what else isn't going to get done if we're putting a lot of time into this. And you hear about other utilities say, oh, they have a dedicated one person that does everything, or they've got engineering departments and stuff like that. But we can do it, and we'll make sure that we make it simpler and more user-friendly.
Excellent. I have a little list of takeaways that I've been writing down throughout this. communication is key, the community knowing what the process is and making that as simple as possible. I think that there's a lot of technical stuff that needs to be done internally that doesn't necessarily need to be customer facing. I think that we should try to make the customer facing portion as simple as possible. I also think it's really important that the installer can do the application on behalf of the customer and that we make sure that that is allowable, because hearing him say that is going to take down a lot of barriers for people that don't understand what questions are being asked or how to, if you can have a line on the application that says, this is being filled out by the installer, and have them do it on behalf of the customer, I think it would make it easier on the utility as well, because now you're going to be talking to someone who really knows what they're doing, and is going to be able to answer your questions better. As far as having one person, I think that even if it's a team effort, the communication sounded like that was the really important thing, that there's one person that's the point of contact that is an expert in this, and it probably should not be you. Someone on your staff that maybe there's even a little training out there, even if it's online training, that they can kind of make themselves this Interconnect expert. They can be the point of contact. They can be doing that communication with the installer. I do think that reduces a lot of barriers rather than having people get kind of shuffled around from person to person, especially when the department is so small. 3 more things on here. Electrician training, HEA mentioned they do that. I thought that was kind of a cool idea, that they actually have a training that they do for electricians that want to learn how to do these installs. Maybe even having, if you've gone through this training, you become a preferred installer and get listed on the website as like, these are the electricians that have gone through our training. Again, that makes your job easier if people are using people that actually know what the city system is. I think that the pre-made engineered plans for these systems under 25 kW is imperative. And that's something that we've talked about before, and that again was brought up, the pushback on it before was the cost, that we don't have an engineering staff, that there's cost up front. But I also think that without that, it cuts out a lot of people that don't have that technical know-how. It's great. It sounds like the other utilities are willing to share some of their resources and the things that they've already done, which will likely work here. So I think we should take advantage of that as much as possible. And then the last thing is just making sure we have a system in place to keep an eye on that 1.5%. I know we're nowhere near it now, but I would hate to have it sneak up on us and have that be a barrier if we see some explosive growth here. So maybe just identifying, maybe we can identify, the Energy Committee maybe can identify what that process is, or some kind of check-in, some check-in times that we can look at where we're at and when we might need to apply for an increase to that. That is all I had on my list. I think we learned so much from those different perspectives. It was really wonderful. Yeah, Norm.
Madam Chair, so one thing we need to be careful about, the city can't recommend one company to install. We have a list, and we can say, hey, here's a list. We're not going to recommend this guy over this guy. Well, that's something the city doesn't want to get into, because it's a big problem. Because then somebody can come back and say, hey, well, the city said I'm better than you, and
So I guess I was thinking about the harbor when I suggested that, where you have a list of contractors, but they have to provide certain things. You have to show that you have insurance. You have to prove these things. So it could just be if you want to install, if you want to be on our list of installers, you have to do our training. I just mentioned that we have to be careful. You just can't say this company here. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's other companies out there, so we have to.
For sure. And there's local people that could be installers as well. Correct. Yeah.
I mean, they could say, how come my name's not on this list? And that's what I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just we need to be careful.
Yeah. No. I understand. That can be tricky, but.
Laura,
yeah.
We just ran into a situation where an owner had a list of unacceptable contractors. We won't accept work by these particular people.
Yikes.
That's a tough thing to do also, but just putting out the qualifications and letting a user or consumer decide And they're gonna bring all this application to the city. At that point, the city says, no, we got a bad experience with this particular person. There's still that opportunity. So, I don't think, I agree with Norm, but trying to prescribe, or even list acceptable contractors rather than just qualifications. That's what you want to do. Well,
Right.
this person needs to have experience and fill these particular boxes. If an electrical administrator's license is required, that they'll have to have that, or an engineer or whatever.
Yep. Point well taken. Linda?
I would just like some help understanding and clarifying what this limitation of the 1.5% is. I heard a report on NPR the other day about solar problems in California where they are actually generating so much power, alternative energy power going into their grid. They have too much power and now they're actually paying Arizona to buy their power. So is that what this 1.5% limit is trying to keep from happening?
Yeah, I think it is. And the 1.5, let me talk about the 1.5% because that was what it was adopted by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska that applies to utilities that are subject to their economic regulation. And I'm looking through our tariff and I don't see where it says we're limited to 1.5%. And the RCA doesn't have to approve our tariff, the city council approves our tariff. I'll go back and check, and I owe you a second response then here. I don't think we've got a 1.5 limitation on here. Maybe someone else has looked at this code more than I will tell me I'm wrong, but my brief review of it says there's no limitation of 1.5%. So
Okay.
I think we're okay, but it's a message though to us here at Seward and to the city council that sets our limitations and our rights is that if we put too much of some type of system in here, it could adversely affect the system, the reliability of the system, the integrity of it, and then you've got this. The problem is you see in these communities that have huge amounts of solar, they work when sunlight's out, but they don't, then you've got to have a significant amount of generation to pick up the loads in the evenings. And that is creating an instability issue with the utilities, and that's why they limit it. So we got to get to a point where we're comfortable with it, but we don't have a 1.5 limitation right now.
Okay, that's good to know.
Gotcha. Yeah, it says something in here about on March 1st of each year, you have to file a tariff advice letter.
That's for the regulated utilities.
Gotcha, okay, gotcha.
All tariffs have to be regulated, like even Harvard.
But we're not regulated because we're buying it from Chugat.
We're not regulated, well, there's two reasons. We're not subject to the regulation of RCA due to our
Home rule.
status as a home rule city.
Right.
So, and we did not opt in like Anchorage did. So, and I wouldn't suggest you do that.
Yeah.
But I think that reporting is something the city council could say they would want Seward Utility to report once a year on our net metering efforts and what we do. So, that's why I kind of included it in the packet today, because while they don't apply to us, they might be best practices.
Yeah.
I would just like to observe that it was very interesting to hear from these different utilities and their enthusiasm. Because having not been met with enthusiasm for years here, it's really encouraging to know that there are happy utilities that are using renewable energy. That's like,
I'm not sure how happy. You need to embrace it, and you need to make it work. And if you don't push, if you don't put the utilities out of their comfort zone, we'll never make changes to make it facilitated. So, they're okay with it. They've had to get over it.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we have any final comments, questions?
Yes, I'd kind of echo, I think we still have a little bit of work to do on the for recommendations on council, the duplication of standards and codes. I think Phil has a point on that. So I'm going to keep in contact with Corey and when the time comes, I think there's still recommendations to be made there. And then, you know, that 1.5%, just for some perspective, that'd be what, another 100 Mr. Cluses on our system or so, so it's not very far.
Yeah.
But also, what if we had one or two larger installs, we could get there very quickly if that was the case. So it seems like a long ways of seeing where we are now, but I think we could get there fairly quickly. And then, you know, that is kind of it's not really an arbitrary figure, but it's something that we have to keep an eye on, I think. That's when the electric department will get a little bit more busy. Right?
Yes, yeah.
So, thank you.
Yeah, well, personally, I just want to thank Corey for coming in here and putting this all together for us, because it's nice to see someone embracing some progress instead of somewhat of a stonewall attitude that we've seen in the past. I understand that it's a difficult arena to navigate, but it's obviously doable, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I would like to reiterate that. Thank you very much. It's a complete change. I was so excited to come today, you know, and other work sessions on electric have been not necessarily so exciting. So thank you. Very appreciated.
Anybody else? Bruce, any parting thoughts?
Well, I appreciate the meeting, and the questions that you guys have asked have been spot on. John came well prepared. Corey deserves credit for putting a very, very professional presentation before us. So, but I'm just going to say again, I'm appalled that this thing is dragged on for this long. And if we've got to continue the pressure from PACAB to reiterate to the council that this has to be moved along, it's ridiculous that it's taken this long, and embarrassing, frankly, and particularly in light of the fact that we see three major utilities in the state who have these programs well developed. It's not rocket science. And I think if I had a chance to speak to the Assembly or to the Council, I would make a personal presentation next Council meeting. And I'm going to look at our agenda, the PACAB agenda for our next meeting, and see if there shouldn't be a line item to reiterate the same things we've said in the past and just keep the pressure up. And I think our electrical utility is certainly capable of implementing the kind of things that we're talking about. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Bruce. So it's not lost on any of us how quickly you put this together.
Okay.
So I want to thank you very much. That's the last time I know that we are all very appreciative, and it's very genuine. What I would like is just in closing to talk very quickly about steps forward. So we've had a great discussion today. What's the next step?
And you're looking at me, for those who are on the phone, this is Corey. So, you know, there's two things. You know, there's a front office and a back office to this. Mm-hmm. And the front office is the communication, you know, so, our PR department's doing this. Well, I'm the PR department, and it's like, so we got to get it communicated out. We've got to get our vendors knowing that, hey, we're open for business on this, and get all that going and have a system in place, and I think we can do that. I think that's probably the simplest thing, and you guys might be the cheerleaders and to help and make that happen. The back office has got to be ready and prepared if once we get people coming in and saying we want to do it. Mm-hmm. And I've got some plans for that. I do believe that I think there's potential for a contracted service. In other words, if you call and you want to interconnect, fine, you call so-and-so, and they're going to handle just like they do at their utility from beginning to end. And they'll have the pre-approved this and that, and everything that you had on your list. And I think I'm working on trying to get that set up.
Okay.
So that is the part of it, the back office of being able to accommodate this when they come in. Who's going to do it? And then the other part is we got to make sure our meters are going to work, and and I'm not convinced our billing system is really going to work. So I've got to get those things touched. So, and to one extent, while we haven't had a big rush for these systems, if we get out front and get all this in here, we got to be able to take care of it and deal with it and deal with the billing issues. So, so what's going to happen next? You're going to put me on your agenda again, and I'm going to kind of report back to you. I'm fine with that. I think, this is something I think Seward Electric Utility should do on its own. We shouldn't need you to have your foot on our back. Even like Mr. Jaffa thinks and suggests. But I get it. I get that. So this is something we should be doing as a good utility, and I'm going to lead us in that direction. I got to put the resources into it, and it's going to take some contracted sort of resources, and I think that's doable. So that's what I got to do. You want a workshop done? We talked about. I think why couldn't we can start structuring what a workshop would look like as part of our outreach and communication to say, hey, let's install your programs. Workshops should be done sooner rather than later. The tax credits, we don't talk about the tax credits going down. I think they're 26% this year. They're going down. Maybe Ben knows, but we don't even want to think about it. They're dropping. So the clock's ticking on that. So we've got to get it going. And so if people in Seward want to put a system on, they can do it sooner rather than later. But that workshop could be like the kickoff of our communication.
Awesome.
How many meters are being sent in for programming?
40.
Okay. Wow. And how many are already allocated to installations, either existing or?
2.
And that counts Phil?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have 38.
Yeah, we have 38.
We have 38 that we could actually market to the community before the end of the year?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So we talked about construction season. I guess what I've been thinking is that we have some time now, because people probably aren't installing systems before the winter, but they might be purchasing them to get the tax credit, but not installing them until the spring. Is that?
I'm not sure that you get the tax credit unless they're installed.
Okay.
But I don't know that for sure. But
Okay.
that would be something I would want to track down. So, yeah, and that would have been a good question for Carl to ask, but I can get you the answer to that question too.
Okay.
But yeah, and our construction season, we've kind of got it under control at this point. And we're going to do some extra projects, try to bring power up into the Camelot subdivision. So a lot of folks that had come in and wanted connects have delayed it due to COVID issues and things like that. So anyway, that's kind of apples and oranges there a little bit for discussion, but.
Okay. Well, on our next PACAB agenda, we do have a line item to talk about those energy workshops. Will you be available to attend that meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'll be here. And one other thing, I'm open working with Ben, or there was a committee. We want to go sit down and do a time to go word by word over the existing interconnection rules and say, here's what we need to change. Because I think the rules that are in front of the council are maybe too specific, and because then if you want to change them or adjust them, you got to go back to the council, and so, but I think they should be a little bit more general, and that's my thinking. But I'd like to have that discussion with the people that are on that
Happy to do that.
energy
Yeah, I'm
committee
happy
here.
to do that.
Excellent. Any parting thoughts from anyone else? Thank you all so very much. Oh, Norm, did you?
Oh, no, I'll say it afterwards, thank you.
Okay. Oh, I guess since since we are on the radio and TV, Census Day is tomorrow. This is your last chance. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. Everyone fill out the census. Adjourned.